Another week of CDL matches has ended, so it's time to update the power rankings as always, and we're just going to hop right into it and start it off with the Vegas Falcons at number 12. I mean, I will say, to their credit, they did win a map this weekend versus the Toronto Ultra, and actually a 6-1 SND here, which is not too bad. And they also almost, I mean, literally almost won a hardpoint here versus LAG. I mean, look at this score graph, right? It was really close up until the end, and then they kind of teetered out towards the end, but I mean, Falcons are going to pretty much always be at 12 until they at least win a hard point, if not a match. Then coming in at number 11, it is OpTic, Texas, still in the same spot. There might be some people that try to argue OpTic should be in last because at least Falcons have won some maps and OpTic haven't won any. But honestly, the two reasons for me are A, OpTic obviously has won matches so far this season, and B, OpTic just beat Falcons a couple weeks ago. So like that head-to-head for me really is, I guess, the tiebreaker. I know it's a power ranking, so like, if you think OpTic are the worst because they haven't won a map in the entire, technically in the qualifiers, that's totally fine. But I mean, we all know Falcons are the worst. But for OpTic, I mean, they're sitting dead last, 0-5, 0-15 map count in the qualifiers, obviously not including the minor. And I mean, this team just can't get anything going, man. They just keep on losing. Like I said, they did beat Falcons, which is, I guess, a win on the board, right, to break up all these 3-0s here. But they can't get a map off of literally anybody. And this coming weekend, they play LA Thieves and they play LAG. So they play both LA teams, right? LAT is probably going to be a 3-0 if we had to guess. And then LAG, I mean, maybe OpTic take a map. COD is a day-to-day thing. Anything can happen. They could come out and fry, right? With just the way it feels like things are going to go, they'll probably come out here and cook LA Thieves, right? That'll obviously be how it goes because me as an LAT fan, that just feels like what happens to us. But I think maybe LAG's a chance for OpTic to get something on the board, but right now it's just not looking good. Coming in at number 10, also in the same spot, it is LAG. I mean, LAG did get a win on the board, as you can see. I mean, they're 1-4 now, 6-12 map count. Their win came against the Vegas Falcons, but I mean, it came against the Vegas Falcons, right? So obviously, I'm not really going to be moving them up. Plus, I thought for a second there they were going to give Vegas their first hardpoint win, so LAG staying at 10. And coming in at number 9, actually down one spot, our first mover is going to be the Boston Breach. I mean, I will say, to Boston's credit, they went Game 5 with Atlanta FaZe, which is pretty insane. I really did not expect this. If anything, I thought this would be a clean 3-0 for FaZe, but they were able to push it Game 5, and they also got 3-0'd by LAT. Boston are coming in as a 2-4 right now, the 9 seed currently with a 10-15 map count. They're just one of those teams that, like, they went 0-2 this weekend and the team above them got a W, so I had to move them up. And that team above them moving up one spot is going to be the Miami Heretics into number 8. Miami is ever so slightly ahead of Boston right now at 2-3. Obviously, these two teams actually play each other next weekend, which might end up being like a decider for who gets this 8 seed going into Major 2. But they were taken down 3-1 by the Vancouver Surge here in an 0-4 masterclass type of series. And then they 3-0'd OpTic Texas, which was their win on the weekend. 1.5 out of Rencor, 1.23 out of Real. I mean, they cooked OpTic, man. That's really what it was. Although this map 1 was one of the worst red card. This red card hardpoint was one of the worst hardpoints I've ever watched in my life. 186 to 175 final. Absolutely terrible. Moving up to number 7, we have the Minnesota Rockers still in at 7. I mean, Rocker only played once this weekend, and they got 3-0'd by Atlanta FaZe. The HP was a little bit close. They actually made a decent comeback. I mean, they were down by nearly 100 points here, and they ended up only losing by about 15. But they are still in number 7. I mean, they're actually, so far, this has been pretty ordered by the standings for the most part. But they're 3-2 right now. They only played one match, like I said. They lost to FaZe, but they're not going to fall below the other teams, in my opinion. Moving on over to our top 6. At number 6, still at number 6, it is Cloud9 New York. C9 played twice this weekend. They took down LAG 3-0 in a super clean series. I mean, 100-point win map 1, 6-2 SND, 3-0 in the control. Sib just continuing to do Sib things. But honestly, the whole team really did their job. And then they were 3-1 by the Carolina Royal Ravens. A match that I think many people thought C9 could take. I actually predicted Ravens to win this Game 5. So that was nice for me. I actually went perfect in my pick'ems, by the way. Just to throw it in there. I did not get a single one wrong this weekend, which is pretty sick. But Ravens, I mean, or not Ravens, Cloud9, they're 4-2 right now in the qualifiers. They're in the number 4 seed, technically, which is pretty good at 15-6 map count. But they're just a team that, like, I feel like is beating the teams they should be, but is getting close or maybe not getting over the edge for the teams that are above them. So I'm going to have to see how they continue to play, but they're a team at least going into the major that is going to be interesting to watch on LAN. Then at number 5, still at number 5, not a lot of movement this week, surprisingly. Actually, only I think 4 teams moved, and we'll obviously get into a couple more of those, but Ultra's still at 5. Ultra's 2 wins this weekend came against the 2 worst teams in the league, right? They 3-1 the Vegas Falcons, as I touched on a little bit earlier. CleanX plus 23, finally looking like he's back in that stage 1 form he was. And then they 3-0'd OpTic Texas, and I mean, everyone kind of did what they had to do, right? they beat the two worst teams in the league, and at least in my power rankings, so can't really move them up off of this. But what I will say, even though they were playing some pretty poor teams this weekend, they look much cleaner. I feel like the way Ultra is playing looks a bit better than I feel like they were looking at the beginning of this stage. So that's at least pretty cool to see. And they do actually play the Vancouver Surge for their last match of this qualifier this coming weekend on Friday, which I think is going to be a big match because they just got 3-0'd by them in the minor, but I think it's going to be significantly closer this coming weekend, so that's going to be a banger to watch. Getting into our top 4 here, still at number 4, I had the Carolina Royal Ravens. The Ravens, to me, are just like the perfect number 4 team. I mean, they're currently number 6 in the Major 2 qualifiers at a 3-2, 10-7 map count record. They got a win this weekend over Cloud9, as I touched on a little bit earlier, which is a team that they're kind of competing with for, I think, that T4, T5 spot right now, so this is obviously a good win to show that Ravens still have what it takes. And just looking at their matches, right? Like, look at their match history. They kind of like, they're just consistent, bro. And the only teams they really lose to consistently are the top teams, or the other top teams, right? LA Thieves, Toronto Ultra, the 3 losses they have in this split, in this stage right now. Ultra maybe a team that you'd want them to be beating, especially because I do have them over them in the power rankings right now. But Ravens are just super consistent, and I feel like they just get the job done. They look really competent, and I feel like they're just a team that's going to stick around the top 4 all season. We get into our top 3, and down 1 spot, I do have the Vancouver Surge. Surge is a team that, I mean, they're 4-1 right now in the qualifiers, 12-8 map count. They obviously took an L this weekend in a 3-0 fashion to LA Thieves, who was a team they went game 7 with in the minor a couple weeks ago, but much cleaner out of LAT this time around. And versus Miami, they got it done 3-1, right? Probably people thought this was going to be a 3-0, but they got it done 3-1. You could still have Surge at number 2, honestly. For me, I just feel like they're coming down to earth a little bit, right? We're seeing Neptune not be as dominant, even though he's still laying down a lot of damage. Nasty definitely coming back down a little bit. And this is just like a Surge team that if you have them at 2, I wouldn't argue. Then coming in at number 2, up a spot, I have Atlanta FaZe, and then obviously I'll show you the last spot. I still have LAT at number 1. I mean, looking at the standings, LAT is currently 1 in Major 2, and FaZe is currently 1 in Major 3. I'm sure there's going to be some FaZe fans that want them to be at number 1, and if you really want to do that, I'm not going to, like, argue about it with you, but I guess my really only reasoning is, 1, LAT is just undefeated recently. They have only lost, like, 1 map or a couple maps in the minor as well. They also went game 5 versus Boston, which LAT 3-0'd, so there's a little bit of reasoning for you if you just want to objectively know why I have them there. It's not any bias towards LA Thieves. It's just what I feel is right currently in the rankings. But FaZe obviously beat Boston 3-2 and beat the Minnesota Rocker 3-0 in a pretty good win here in a pretty good series. And then on the side of LAT, they obviously 3-0'd the Surge, as we just touched on, and they 3-0'd the Boston Breach. So LAT just continued to look super, super dominant. And in control, I mean, they haven't lost to control all stage, which is insane. They're currently ranked number 1 in SND this stage. And I don't know exactly what their hardpoint rank is, but I'd imagine it's probably top 3. But I will say the power rankings this week feel really, really good. Honestly, to me, the only real potential move I think you could do is keeping Surge at 2 and keeping FaZe at 3, just because we have seen Surge beat FaZe a couple times in the past month or so. So if you did do that, I think that's totally fair. But everything else I feel like is actually perfect. Like, I genuinely really like these rankings. So you let me know what you think. And as we head into this next week, this is the last weekend of qualifiers before Major 2. And we obviously have a couple teams that need to be fighting for that winner's bracket spot. OpTic, I believe, is guaranteed losers, which is quite unfortunate for their home major where they're going to be getting their rings from last season. So I think it's going to be like a Boston versus Miami sort of. Whoever wins that series ends up getting winner's bracket for Major 2. But like I said, let me know what you think. Sub to the channel for more CDL content, and hopefully I'll see you all in the next one.